Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for coming, and let me start off by hoping everybody had a Merry Christmas, a good holiday, and a wonderful New Year's. Today, we're here to talk about foreign-owned agriculture land in Missouri. With China and other adversarial nations on the move, concerns about the threat to our security interests have increased. Director Parson, Director Chin, General Compton are here with me today, as this order will directly impact their agencies. Lieutenant Governor is also here. Being a farmer like myself, this issue has been important to him and his office. I want to clarify something about the Lieutenant Governor before everybody tries to put a political spin on this. Last week we were scheduled to do this press conference. My mother-in-law was in hospice at the time, so we delayed it till today. Last night, the First Lady's mother passed away about 8 o'clock. The Lieutenant Governor was prepared to make these remarks today. If I couldn't make it, I come back up today to do this. So I want you to know that's another reason why he's here and how much I appreciate what he does all the time to take my place at times like that. With no legislation approved the last couple of years and the coming political year, our administration wants to make sure we have something on the books to safeguard Missouri's security interest with the authority we do have as governor. While we have had no issues at this point, we want to be proactive against any potential threats. That's why today we are signing Executive Order 24-01 to ban China and other nations that may wish us harm from owning Missouri agriculture land within 10 miles of any critical military facilities in the state. In addition to China, other nations banned include those designated as foreign adversaries by the U.S. State Department. Additionally, our order grants the Missouri Department of Agriculture greater oversight and enforcement authority over all foreign agriculture land purchased. With this order, any foreign purchase of Missouri farmland must first be examined and approved by the Missouri Department of Agriculture. To help ensure that MDA has the necessary resources and staff to enforce these additional protections, we're including over $200,000 and 2 additional FTEs in our upcoming budget recommendations to the General Assembly. I want to take a moment to reiterate what we are doing here today. We are banning all purchases of Missouri agriculture land within 10 miles of critical military facilities by adversary nations, including China. And we are empowering MDA to make a more active role in all potential foreign agriculture land purchases by entities from any foreign nation, including the approval or denial of all purchases. Understanding the heightened concern, this order safeguards our military and intelligence assets, prevents security threats to our state, and gives Missourians greater peace of mind. Now, I want to take a moment to address some potential questions as to why we didn't go further and why we know there are other ideas out there. First of all, this is as far as an executive authority goes under the current law of the state. Believe me, if I had the authority, we wouldn't just be talking about banning farmland, but all commercial properties by foreign adversaries, regardless of rural or urban. Because a commercial building in our urban area in the hands of adversaries poses just as much, if not more, of a threat to our security interests than a rural farm. Second, some of the other proposals being presented are clearly performative and would harm Missourians from our allies. Banning our adversaries, yes, but if we start banning every purchase of farmland by any foreign individual or businesses, then where does this end? Because I want to remind Missourians, and especially legislators, that foreign investments by friendly nations brings billions of dollars and thousands of jobs to our state. In the last 5 years alone, nearly $19 billion has been invested in our state. Nearly 150,000 Missouri jobs are directly supported through foreign-owned Missouri businesses across our state. Missouri has always had and always welcomed foreign investments from friendly nations. We are talking investments from our nation's allies, nations that do not pose a risk to our security. And let me emphasize again, when people say no foreign investments, you're talking about Israel, number one, that has investments in our state. We're talking about Sweden. We're talking about Italy. You're talking about Germany. You're talking about the United Kingdom, Canada, Japan, just to name a few. And the ones I just listed were over 500 businesses that do business in our state. And the Missouri workers in these facilities are producing trusted household goods like hefty trash bags, Reynolds wrap, Tums, Purex laundry soap, Dove soap, Kawasaki lawnmowers, pets and livestock medicines, and Fiocchi ammunitions, just to name a few. These employees are from friendly nations that we have strong, decade-long economic partnerships with, and we must ensure that we are not disrupting Missouri's economy or Missouri lives. These nations pose no threat. These nations are our allies. Common sense decisions and a balanced approach must be taken into consideration. I want to remind Missourians that the United States and Missouri stand as a beacon of hope, freedom, opportunity for victims of oppression and communism around the globe. We want to protect the security of our state and safeguards against any threats to Missourians. But we don't want to stand in the way of good people longing for a better life from coming to Missouri legally, I might stress legally, and pursuing their American dream. As such, we believe this order today sufficiently protects Missourian security interests and potential bad actors, while not punishing our allies for being good economic partners. With that, I'll be glad to take some questions.
Kara Hart, Brownfield Ag News Radio Network. I wondered if this was retroactive, and then why choose the ban within 10 miles of a military facility? Why not do the whole state?
Well, because one, I don't have the authority to do that. It's in the executive order. The military I do because it has to do with rural land that we do that. We know that's a formula that's kind of being used to be able to do that. What was the first part of your question? Is
this retroactive at all?
It is not. It's moving forward. So at this point today, we have not had an issue under these circumstances. Again, this is an executive order, and I am limited to somewhat what I can do. We'll see what the General Assembly does. This has been in the General Assembly for some times, and what we are really doing is taking a proactive stance to make sure we have something to cover in case nothing happens this year in the General Assembly. On that.
Okay.
Governor Parson, do you want the General Assembly to do something this year about foreign ownership of any land? And if so, what would you like them to do?
Well, it's not my place to tell the General Assembly what to do, nor would that probably be a good strategy on my part if I tried to do that. But I think what I really would recommend, somebody has to get at the table with some common sense and to be able to make proposals that we can make what is best for the state of Missouri. You know, you're always your biggest concern this year. Let's just face it, this is a political year, so there's going to be a lot of things said for political reasons. But at the end of the day, somebody has to come up with a practical way to handle these situations that we can move forward. And we'll see what the General Assembly does. Right now, this is a placeholder to see what they do. If not, we do have some protection for Missouri citizens with this executive order.
Could you elaborate a little bit more on what constitutes a military facility or a critical facility to the state, and how many of these are there? What types of things you're talking about?
Yeah, I'll be a little careful. The general's here if I need you to back me up here on this one, but there's basically there's three tier sections of military installations on the state. I think it's like a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And those are all ranked on depending on the importance of what is there. I want to be a little careful what we say because we're always a little concerned about classified information. But I think generals are like 300 facilities across the state. Am I somewhere in there? How many? Somewhere. So there's several hundred of them across the state in different areas. So not all of them will be in that, especially if it's non-personnel or maybe it's been for storage or something. But again, I want to be careful what I say on the military side of things.
I guess also, are there things like power substations, or is this just military things?
Right now, military is an executive order, what we're able to do. And then again, I think the safeguard we have also, if anyone tries to buy foreign land for whatever purposes, the safeguard has to go through the Department of Agriculture. So there's also a stopgap there in case we got into that situation. We still have the authority to do that under the current executive order.
Governor, you said this is not retroactive, so my question to you is, what do you say to those who ask why you didn't do this years ago?
Well, really, there was no reason to do this years ago. I mean, these threats were not the same years ago. I know there's been comments like 2013, 2014, but the threats are different today than what they were then. We know we live in a different era right now with security, with all the things that are going on, so just to be able to do it. Look, what I'm trying to do is take a action because we haven't taken any in the state. And I get the political spin where people want to say those type of things. Why didn't you do something sooner? But if we do that, then it's tick for tack. Then you're saying, why didn't the legislators do something sooner? The bottom line, somebody has to do something. That's what the governor's office did, and that's why we're here today.
Follow up, if I may.
Yeah.
Is this enough to protect Missouri land?
Is it what?
Is this enough to protect Missouri farmland?
Well, I think it's a start to definitely be able to protect Missouri land, where we're going to be able to control what foreign companies come here and whoever's in here to stay. Again, depending on what the legislation does, too. I don't know what the General Assembly is going to do. But right now, for a foreign entity to come into this state, regardless who they are, would have to go through the Missouri Department of Agriculture, and we have a say in that.
Sorry. Is there any land right now near a military facility within this 10 miles that is already owned by China or another foreign adversary? Is there any land already like this that's foreignly owned?
Not that we are aware of. We do not believe that's the case.
Last year, the legislature there were two different versions of the bill. So the House had exceptions, or had the basically banning adversaries, whereas the Senate had a total ban. Is there a preference of what you would like to see with legislation if the legislature were to tackle this issue this year?
A total ban of foreign adversaries or foreign companies?
Total foreign purchases in the Senate versus the House, which had a list of adversaries.
No, look, I'm targeting adversaries. We've had a relation for decades with companies from Israel, from Germany. I don't think you want to be sending a message out there at all saying we don't want you to come here to our state and be a partner with us, whether it's those, whether it's Sweden, whether it's Italy. I mean, you can go on down the list of people that have really been good partners with us. We'll see what the legislators do, but I would probably much rather isolate. I would let them focus on our adversaries. Those are the enemies of our country. Those are the enemies of our state, and that's what we should be focusing on right now.
Yeah, Governor, could you talk a little bit about the enforcement, like how you would enforce this? Like, is this more of a directive to the Department of Agriculture, or is there a specific statute that you're basing?
Well, it's a directory on the executive order. Now, statute-wise, again, this is where it becomes a little more tougher to understand. You have the legislative branch that have to make the law, and that's the guidelines I have to stay under. So what powers I do have, I can basically, as an advisory role to the department, to direct it to the Department of Agriculture to do this, but they would also have to be a set of rules put in place where everybody would kind of know what that was. But again, that is a placeholder to see what reaction we get from the legislative branch this year.
So what kind of limits or regulations is the Department of Agriculture going to have in terms of their ability to decide whether or not land can be purchased or not.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Is there a list of restrictions or any guidance to the Department of Agriculture so that they can make the decision, should this land be purchased or denied?
Yeah, I think we got to develop the rules to that. Again, so I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. Most every question so far has been directed towards ag land. I think it's important. This is a security type issue that threatens us all over the state. This is not about ag land. This should be about the entire state of Missouri, whether you live in urban, suburban, or rural. Because if we're talking about adversaries, we don't want them close to any of our installations where information's had on that. So the Department of Agriculture would then develop the rules and come up with the guidelines of what countries would be there. And again, that's all public proceedings, so we would have to disclose all of that as we move forward.
Okay, two-part question here. One, what can you tell us about the development of these guidelines with the Department of Agriculture? Has there been any process made on this? Is there a timetable? And then what's the plan to differentiate between, foreign companies that are, basically coming in and wanting to do whatever, and say Russian migrant that's come into here? We have a sizable Russian diaspora in Pettis County, and now the majority of the county is impacted by this. What do you say to basically somebody coming in from Russia wanting to get away from Putin and basically, take up farming and be a good old Missouri boy?
Okay, all right. Let's break it down. Tell me your first question. You made the wrong statement
two
there.
parts here. First of all, the process of defining the rules. How far along is that? Was there a timetable? And I guess how exactly is the Department of Agriculture going to put these about?
Well, this rule goes effective today. So I'm going to say the Director of Agriculture better be on our A game. Because that process starts today when we sign this executive order.
In terms of, you said there was a $200,000 to, scan future purchases. What the criteria for that?
I don't get hung up on the number deal. She's got enough money. Whatever it takes to get it done, we're going to get it done. Okay. We're just trying to help with the budgetary for next year to be able to put people there. But she's got the people over there in the finances to do it right now. So to enforce this order.
And then the second part was, basically, determining if there's a foreign buyer who might have a connection to one of these foreign countries, be it an individual. How exactly do you determine, is it like, that's it, you can't get it even though you immigrated here and fleeing? Or?
Yeah, I think you can go through an investigation there. You've got to go through the timelines of researching who they are, what they represent, what's the history of the company, or what's the history of that individual, and you've got to make a call, And currently that would fall under the Department of Agriculture. It would fall under that director to do that.
Some members of Congress, John Tester in Montana, others, have suggested that for states to go down this road gets real tricky real fast because of constitutional protections, equal protection clauses and whatnot.
Right.
What have your lawyers told you about how far you can push without being over some constitutional line?
Yeah, well, I think we're at that point. We've talked to General Counsel about this, and again, that's why I said specifically under executive order, I only have so much authority to be able to do that, and we're utilizing that authority. We feel like this is the best constitutional ground for us to stand on right now because of the way the statutes are written, and it deals with rural land. It doesn't say anything about urban or suburban, so that's why sometimes in the executive order we're talking about rural, because that is in the statutes. So I can't go beyond a description that's not in the statutes. I know that's a little maybe hard to understand, but the reality of it is I don't have that authority. I wish I did, but I don't. So we have to stay within the Constitution. I think one of the things we met with the General Counsel, and the Attorney General couldn't be here because we've talked about that also. Whatever we do, we've got to make sure it'll stand up in court. And we feel like this is the right path to go.
Question, Governor. How much, if any, communication did your administration have with the federal government, the U.S. Department of Agriculture before making this decision?
Not much. I mean, there's not been very much communication between the federal government and this state. I will say that since the administration changed. It's just the way it is.
All right, final two questions. Emily?
Mine's about overall session. Going into this year, it starts tomorrow, and then we have a 5 crazy month ahead of us. What are you expecting? What are you hoping? And especially it's an election year. You mentioned that earlier.
Yeah. So first of all, why do you assume it's going to be crazy for 5 months? I mean, I'm thinking it's my last year. I think there will be calmness. I think things should go very smoothly, and it'll be my last session. That's what I'm thinking. That's how I'm trying to think positive about this. So, look, it's a political year. It's the last session for me that I'm going to be here. I don't, as past history goes, normally in a political year, not a whole lot of stuff happens. You know, I think the main goal this year is probably going to try to get the budget done and see what the General Assembly can put together and see what we can agree on some things at the end of the day. But I don't make any predictions how the session's going to go. But, you know, we'll see. There's a lot of people running for office in the maybe more than most times, so we'll see how that all plays out. But I hope for all of the media that's here today, and I know there's legislators here today, and I appreciate them being here also. I hope people, instead of being tried to be so controversial, I hope we really come out at the end of the day with a lot of good people, and there's a lot of good people in the General Assembly. We need to find things that makes Missouri a better state. And if we continue to focus on that goal, like I feel like we have since the last 5.5 years, we've been very successful of making that a priority. I think there's plenty of people in the General Assembly understand that you have to take a balanced approach, and common sense will prevail at the end of the day.
All right, last question, Kara.
Is there anything, Governor, that you'd like to tell the farmers and ranchers of Missouri that are looking to sell maybe land within a military facility, to who they can sell to, and what this means for the future of any land acquisitions or land sales for
Well,
them?
it definitely affects them. I mean, you're not going to be able to do that, you know, without the approval of getting approval for that, to be able to do that, or somebody to come in and do that. Now, I want to make sure. Again, this is not a simple issue to how you draw up the parameters of it. So we've talked to all the ag leaders. We've talked to almost all the ag leaders to make sure they understand what exactly is happening here. And I think under the threat we are today versus where we were 10 years ago, the dynamics have changed totally. I think farmers understand that too. They want to preserve their land as much as possible. We all do. I mean, I'm a landowner. I'm a farmer. I want to protect it as much as possible. But yeah, if you've got land inside that 10-year or that 10-mile parameter, you're going to be limited to what you can do with it. If you're trying to sell it to a foreign entity, you can't sell it to a foreign adversary. Period. But I can't imagine a farmer ever wanting to do that.
Well, if they're the top bidder, right?
I'm just telling you. Well, you don't have to take a bid because somebody bids on your land. I think that's a hypothetical that I just don't think very many farmers would do that to fellow farmers. That's the kind of confidence I have. I would never sell my farm to a foreign adversary because of my neighbors, no matter what that offer was. I wouldn't do it. And I think most farmers would say the same thing.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for coming today. Appreciate it.